So actually, Wild Conversations is a series of casual conversations that we have about nature and sustainability. Once a month, we invite speakers to come and join us to tell us about the topic of their specialty. So today we'll be talking about Majete Wildlife Reserve, and also as part of this giveaway, for every $25 donated to African Parks, you will stand a chance to win a bottle of Painted Wolf wines by the Wine Safari. So yes, it is basically here. So there are 2 bottles to be won, and I will pass this around for you to make your contribution. So what is African Parks? Who are they? I'll leave Emmanuel to tell us more about them. So I will pass this around. Hang on. While I do this, you can... Okay, so let's start with, so actually before we start, we usually start with a quiz to get everyone warmed up about our topic. So I have 3 questions for us today. The first one is, Africa harbors how many % of the world's biodiversity? Like, what is the percentage of the world's biodiversity that Africa harbors? Yeah. I'll give you three answers: 25%, 35%, or 55%. 55, 35. Anyone else? 55. Wow, okay, no, the answer is unfortunately only 25%. But 25% is a quarter of the world's biodiversity, right? So that is a lot. The second one, it is said that it costs approximately US $1,500 per hectare to restore damaged ecosystems, but to protect nature that is still intact would cost an average of how much per hectare? So it is said that it costs approximately $1,500 USD to restore damaged ecosystems, but to protect nature that is still intact, it costs an average of how much per hectare? So make a guess. It's going to be hard. So $6, $66, or 100?
Wow.
Yeah, to protect nature that is still intact. So, make a guess. 6?
Okay, 6.
Anyone else? No guesses?
I would think the 60, but it's like 66?
66. No, so actually the answer is $6.
Oh, wow.
So to restore...
So little.
So little. Yeah, so little. So it makes so much sense to actually protect ecosystems that are still intact rather than to repair them when they are damaged. So which year, so since we're talking about African parks, let's find out more about them, right? So which year did African parks start the reintroduction of wildlife into Majete, and what species were the first to be introduced? Yeah.
Wow.
Which year did African parks reintroduce wildlife into the park, and which species of wildlife was reintroduced first? Emmanuel, you cannot answer this question. So, any guesses? Any guesses? No? Okay, so the answer is the park started in 2003, and they started reintroductions in 2006. So 3 years later, and they reintroduced the rhino and the elephants into the park. These were the 2 ecosystem engineers that were introduced into the park. Okay, so that's so much talk from me. I will start with a quick introduction of the topic and our speakers. So today we are talking about Majete Wildlife Reserve. It is roughly the size of Singapore, actually. It's 700 kilometer square, but it boasts an abundant amount of wildlife, including elephants, rhinos, lions, cheetahs, and wild dogs. So it was not too long ago that actually the park was shunned by visitors and drained of wildlife through poaching. So today we will hear of its resurgence through Carmen and Tim and Emmanuel from Majete. So I'll start with, I'll let Carmen and Tim introduce themselves, and then we'll head on to Emmanuel, who will tell us more about what African Parks is and what they do. So yeah, Carmen, you can start first. Yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Carmen, and thank you to Wild Space for inviting us. We are just crazy animal lovers who love to go travel to everywhere in the world to see nature, and this was an opportunity that we actually, so I love wild dogs as well. It's one of the most rare species of predator in the world. So an opportunity came about that we actually could go to Majete in Malawi to follow the team to track wild dogs. Hence, we were there and we saw a lot more. So my introduction is that I love nature, and I met Daphne. Actually, I need to do a little bit of self-promotion. I also am the director of the Singapore Wildcat Action Group, and we protect all kinds of wildcats, but mostly the Malayan tiger. But today we're going to talk about African species. Thank you.
Yeah, and my name is Tim. I'm married to Carmen, and also am I'm a conservationist. And in my other job, I am working for sustainable logistics. So that's why my new shirt, Move Green, on there. So yes, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to introduce African parks, as well as kind of a very unique way they have of increasing biodiversity and saving a lot of the wild spaces in Africa, which is very unique and under constant threat in this day and age. So.
Absolutely. So thank you so much. We'll move on to Emmanuel. So Emmanuel, maybe you can introduce yourself and also tell us a little bit more about African Park so that the audience can find out.
Thank you very much. I'm Emmanuel. My name is Emmanuel Candiero. I was born here in Malawi. Just a bit of a background about myself. Everyone can hear me, right?
Yeah, everyone can hear you quite well, right? Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Yeah. So, I was born in Malawi. I've been fortunate enough that my conservation story started a long way. So, to start with, my dad was a park ranger, and I was born with him. And I grew up inside a national park. By the time I was born, he was working in Nika National Park, that's northern part of Malawi. And then I basically spent all my life up to when I started working. So from Nika, he got transferred to a different national park, was a game reserve, and then he got transferred back to Nika National Park. Then he transferred to Liwonde National Park. But these are all various national parks in Malawi. And growing up with him in these national parks helped me experience conservation in different parts of Malawi. And then after I finished my secondary school, I applied for a government-sponsored wildlife management course, and luckily enough, they chose me, and I went and attended the training and became a field ranger for the Department of National Parks and Wildlife. I was sent to work in another national park in Kota Wildlife Reserve, which is further to the north. So from Liwonde, we're going back to the north. So I worked with the government as a park ranger for 3 years, and then decided to join hospitality industry. So I was approached by a foster lodge inside Majete Wildlife Reserve where I was working. And they asked if I was interested in joining the hospitality industry as a guide and as an assistant manager. So I said, of course, I have watched my dad being a ranger all his life. It was great to be a ranger as well, but I think it's important also that we try other profession. And by the way, it was also inside the national park. So it's inside the Majete Wildlife Reserve. So it's the same thing, doing conservation, but generating funds instead of being a ranger. So I worked with that lodge for a total of 10 years. And during the time, they slowly promoted me, and I ended up being the manager of the lodge. And then I saw this amazing opportunity here in Majete Wildlife Reserve. They were looking for a tourism manager, which is more or less the same thing. The only good thing about it is I would be still doing conservation, but directly making money that will sponsor a national park because a lodge and all the tourism facilities that are in Majete that I'm working for now belongs to African parks. And whatever money we generate for African parks. So I said, well, why not going there? Because I will combine the two. I was a ranger protecting animals, and then I became a person in hospitality industry making money. Let me go to Majete and combine both. Working in tourism industry while generating money for conservation. That's a bit history about myself. So I work in Majete as a tourism manager, and my job basically involves looking after all tourism facilities and of course a bit of conservation work because we take our visitors and to show them around the national park, and we need to know what we are showing them. So I'm actively involved in conservation as well. So to make it easier, I wanted to see if I can share my screen with everyone. Um, and I hope everyone doesn't mind. I think this way I can cover a lot. All right. So on this front page, if you can read everything, but I'll quickly go through things. You can see that it shows the timeline from when African parks started their operations here in Majete, and below there. I don't know if you can see the cursor when I'm scrolling, if it's able to show you that side. Anyway, yeah, so it's important that when we're talking about Majete, we talk about the government. You can see on the bottom right, is the logo of our government, a coat of arms. So it's important we mention them because they allow us to run the national park on behalf of them. And on the middle, we are Majete, and of course, it's an organization, African Parks. Majete is located in Malawi, southern part of Malawi. Mind you, it is now running three other national parks, but the third one is a small one connected to the Wondi National Park, Mangochi Forest Reserve. But in general, we can say African parks. So, like I said, it started in 2003, 28 March, and the contract expires in 2025. That's 2028, that's 25 years in total. After the 25 years, there will be an option to extend if government says they are not ready to take back Majete, which most likely will be the case, will extend for another 15 years. That's the mandate period here in Malawi. Of course, you might know we have four main objectives to restore the biodiversity of the reserve. deliver economic and social benefits to people that are surrounding the reserve, very important. To mend this relationship between ourselves and government, and most importantly is long-term viability of the reserve. The reserve has to come to a point where it's self-sustaining through tourism and income-generating activities. The state of the reserve in 2002. So I didn't mention, but when I was born in Gwaza, so young, there were few species left in Gwaza Wildlife Reserve. Gwaza Wildlife Reserve was one of the national parks in Malawi that lost its animals recently. Of course, there are few animals still left, but by then it had only some few species left, and the animals were not pushed as much. So I remember myself as a kid, I used to play with these animals, and then slowly I saw the population of animals going down, which has begun to come with the population growth. Everyone came into the reserve to kill the animals and sell them so they can sustain their families. So I am a living proof of how things were. This is how they got finished by poachers, and then how African parks tried restore some of these wildlife in a few protected areas that it is protecting. So you can see our first line says there were only few game remaining. So in 2002 here in Majete, there was basically almost nothing. We could come and drive for the whole day and not see a single animal. The last elephant that was killed in Majete was back in 1992. So since then, if we didn't have any African parks or anyone coming, we wouldn't have seen elephants since then. The last rhino killed in the 80s, and the large predators were recorded in the 90s, last predators. There was rampant poaching. You can see from the photo slides, a lot of guns. We call those manslaughter guns. They are man-made, very dangerous. One bullet can kill an elephant. Even dangerous to humans as well, because if not properly done, they can backfire and kill the one who's shooting. You can see the vehicle below on the last slide. That's game meat. It used to be like that in the villages. People selling animals. Extensive logging. So we have in all our national parks in Malawi, especially in Majete, also we have special type of trees that are high hardwood, and people use to do logging. We could see trucks loaded with logs driving in and out of the reserve. Limited resources, especially funds. And it's important that you national park without investing, and things are stunted and people losing animals. 12 staff members only by then. I mentioned the size of the national park. A big national park for 2 staff members alone. So, for example, currently we have up to 160
I don't think so.
staff members, from which 3 are experts that came to kind of help us with this conservation and give extra skills to local people. Tourism had collapsed by then. There were only 3 visitors in 2002, and no visitors in 2002, and only 3 in 2003.
But it's not blown out. Yeah. Right.
As of now, we have over 4,000 visitors that were recorded last one vehicle only by then. So the size of the national park with 1 vehicle, it was nothing. You can never deploy rangers everywhere with 1 vehicle. But as of now, we have a total of 38 vehicles, from which mostly are Land Rovers, Land Cruisers, and quad motorbikes. There was only 3 houses by then, but now there's up to 58 houses that accommodate our workers in this reserve. Management. By then, that's the picture. The first picture you see, that's Tom Turner, the first park manager after African Parks. And those are all the weapons, more weapons that we confiscated. To the bottom left, that's the Martin, one of the conservation gurus, one of the big five people that started African parks. And you can see on the bottom right the infrastructure, basic infrastructure that they started when they were building, starting the building. And to run this national park, you need at least six sections. There is the park manager that needs to be there to oversee everything. And you need other departments like finance, technical, who are responsible for building, funding reports manager, that's Rosie, that is with us now. Community extension, you need people to go around the village and educate people about how it's important to preserve wildlife and to look after them for future generations. Law enforcement, you need rangers patrol around, and of course tourism. We did mention about the four main focus areas, but these are we have downgraded them to three, which covers everything. So we have part revenue generation, and that's where some few departments put together everyone who generates money for the park. Biodiversity conservation, that includes a law enforcement and a monitoring team. And then we have community development, that's educating people around. So the three focus areas in conservation of Majete are those ones. We have values that we follow. 10 core values, from which the three that has arrows are the most important ones. I'm sure I can share this one with Carmen at the end, so that she can share also with whoever wants to look at them critically. But with these core values, they help us directing us to how we need to properly manage Majete Wildlife Reserve. The rehabilitation process. So it's not about just bringing animals into a wildlife reserve. You need to make sure that there is a fence that will protect them from going outside. Because it's not only about animals being killed, it's also about the protection of people. It's about eliminating conflict between people and animals. It doesn't make sense to stop poachers from coming in if an elephant can go out there and kill people. So the first area of focus when you are about to run a national park is to build a fence to the animals from going out and stop people from coming in. So we have a Majete is completely fenced with 144 kilometers of fence, and it's all electric. Animals know that it's dangerous. People know it's dangerous. We have done awareness so that people don't touch it. It won't kill people, but just will give them a serious sting. And it works. It's our first line of defense. And we also maintain our roads. If you have to go and monitor your wildlife, you have to have good roads. If you want to generate money for your national park, you need to have good roads. The accessibility is good. So we started with building a fence and 350 kilometers of roads inside the national park for accessibility and protection of the national park. More rehabilitation. So those are the things that we have done here in Majete. We have built beautiful gates, roads, offices, an airstrip. All roads are properly put with a signpost. You can see it on the top left. We have built some tourism infrastructures like lodges, and we have a beautiful workshop. Everything that is done here. We convert our own game viewers. We have imparted skills in our local staff, and they can do almost anything on site. We have a very good law enforcement team that look after this national park from the inside. As community education is fighting for educating people outside the reserve, there is a team inside that keeps poachers out, and it uses a very good a monitoring system and technology. We can almost, you can see on the screenshot above, that's one of our screening monitoring group that monitors everything that happens in the national park. You can see that an elephant is walking close to the boundary and it might cause problems into the village and quickly go before it breaks out, put it back in. And we can monitor the activity. We can see that one lion is stationary at one place. You can quickly go and check if the condition is okay. And we can use radio systems to communicate with everyone inside the reserve. And you can see on the bottom right, there is a helicopter even for Malawi that we can call if there is a problem that needs urgent attention. Flying rangers to get to the point and monitor the situation. We also have dogs that helps us with tracking of various activities in the national park. They can track the scent of poachers that came to kill an animal inside the reserve, and we can still track them and still arrest them. Area census that was done. I will not go into details, but you can see that the figures of animals counted as at 2012 versus 2020 and versus 2022, population is really growing. So it's a signal that population of animals here in Majete is doing so well. So just you have it in mind that all the animals have been reintroduced into Majete. They are animals that were here before. The other important thing you want to do is to make sure you introduce animals that were here before, because you don't want to experiment on animals that have never been here. I'm sorry, with the population of rhinos, I'm just saying the population is growing. We somehow are not allowed to just say it to the public, but it is growing. It has doubled or tripled. All these animals are doing so well. Population is thriving. Actually, these figures are now way more than they are because they were recorded as in 2022, but they have definitely multiplied again. I can come back to this slide if I have a question later on how many Convos we have. Majete is famous to now be one of the only big five national park. I think there's two, Majete and Liwonde. We are very proud that we are a big five park to be a national park with all these animals that are endangered, but they are all doing so well. And that's just a bit of a translocation process that was done. You can see on the bottom the numbers. We got 154 elephants. And if you can go back to the other slide and look at elephants, it's now over 276. I'm confident now that we are nearly 350 elephants. So populations are doing so well compared to when they were reintroduced. And research, very, very important to know that the animals you have in the national park are well monitored. They are not being pushed. Population is doing so well. Find out if there is any problem with them, so that we can quickly find a solution. So we have a good monitoring system that tracks all our animals and they give us a report every month about how the animals are doing and if there is anything that we can do. Mostly all the animals look after themselves, but it's just important to be sure that the project we started is doing so well and is being monitored. Going to communities, like I said, we need to work with communities. We can never win a war without involving the communities. And the communities have to understand that we are not stopping them from animals because the animals are theirs. But we are looking after the animals so that they are not finished now. We need to repopulate other national parks first. You can see the map, and the green is Majete, and we are surrounded by so many villages. We group them into what we call community-based organization or community business organization. And they are looked after by 6 traditional authorities These communities were grouped into community-based organizations because it makes it easier for us to support them. Through the community education and extension manager, we go to the communities and identify what we can do to them. They can choose if they want us to build a fish pond for them. And if we have money donated toward that, we build them a fish pond and they keep their own fish, they sell the fish, they find food for their families, and they sell some of them and they make money, pay for their kids' school fees, and then they don't have to come and kill animals inside the national park. And some communities would love to keep honey. We buy beehives for them, teach them how to attract bees into the hive, buy them equipment on how to harvest beehives, and they sell the honey to us, make money directly that they can use to support their families. Once the honey is here, we process it, we bottle it, and we sell it. Profits goes back to investing into the communities. You can see on the left, that's more of the projects. We supply water, give them a borehole, and we supply schools with the learning and maintenance equipment, and we involve these communities directly to come and see what we have inside the national park, see how the national park is improving in comparison to how it was. So that's just more of the projects that we have done to these communities. You can see there it says community campsite. So we have a campsite, and the percent of the profit, 50% of the profits made from the campsite goes to the communities, just as a way of maximizing income that can go and support the communities out there. I must say we have the most beautiful communities outside the reserve. They support us a lot. It's all because we support them. They know that if they damage Majete Wildlife Reserve, they're going to affect the relationship between them and ourselves. We have communities that can easily take a phone and make a phone call to us to say there is someone coming into the national park. Please prevent them from coming in. Catch them before they get inside. We don't want them to ruin the relationship between you and us. I won't go through all the projects. I can pick on that when I have a question on this. But on the photo slides, the last one is that guy dancing. Well, it's not a guy, it's an animal, it's a spirit. And we call them Gule Wankoro. They come and perform for our visitors inside the national park. We pay them a little bit, so they earn money. But when they come, they show us how history was about Malawi. Their songs are composed based on history. You can see some ladies doing some basket weaving. That's one of the initiatives they do to make money. So we buy those and we put in our safari shop. You can see these guys harvesting their fish with fishing nets and beehives. There is a lot that we do. Fortunately, I'm not going to go through everything. Partners, I would say maybe the first partners are our donors, because they help us donating to what is needed to run Majete and to help communities outside there. But we also have special projects like Honey with Heart. This is with a gentleman also that donates money that we use to support the communities with Honey project. Hunger project. These guys help us funding because they deal with the hunger, they buy food for the communities, and it's important that they come through us because they know their money will be accountable, they know it will be allocated to the right people. Banjalam Sogolo, that's a family planning organization that deals with teaching communities on the importance of having less kids. Previously, if you have few kids, it would be 13 kids. That would be someone with a small family. People had up to 18 kids, and it was not healthy for Malawi. It was not good for the reserve because we increased the pressure around the reserve. Reading around, It's a company that supplies books to us that we use to supply into schools so that the kids can read about conservation at their young age. Unfortunately, in Malawi, primary schools, we don't have conservation as a subject. They don't teach it. So to build passion in our kids in Malawi, it's not easy. It's easier for people who are born inside the national park, but it's not easy for a villager to become a conservationist because they don't know about it until they are an adult, and it's simply not easy to just get their passion. So they support us with books, a lot of books that we supply into the schools so the kids can learn. Yeah, and these other sequences, these are now getting involved to try and see if we can supply cooking materials. We make briquettes from papers and rubbish that the villagers can collect. I think it's also a very important project because it can replace using firewood and extensive using of firewood, and at the same time you clean up the surrounding if you use plastic paper or groundnut shells or maize husks or bamboo to make briquettes for cooking. And the stoves that use one piece of firewood instead of using a heap of firewood. Educational visits by schools. We involve these kids to come inside the reserve. We have a community campsite that we accommodate them so they can come into the national park, learn about conservation. We teach them about how it's important to look after these animals because they are our future leaders. To bring the chiefs to also come. That's the picture of the community campsite. We are upgrading it now. We are building a hostel so that the kids can stay here comfortably. And they have their little vehicle that we can take them around and show them animals. It's amazing how you can be shocked when you go into a community, show a picture of an elephant and kids don't know about it, but they just live next door to the reserve. So it's important that we invite them inside as much as we can. We do allow these communities to come and harvest some of the annually, like grass. If you don't cut grass, it will die and come back next year. So we allow people to come and harvest that bamboo. Unfortunately, our park is not very rich with fruits, but in parks that have fruits, they can allow them to come and collect fruits. They can allow them to come and collect mushroom because they come and go anyway. It's not like an elephant that will stay there for 70 years. And some more projects, we have built school blocks, things that we have done. We have built clinics to our partners. We have built teachers' houses to try and accommodate teachers so they feel like being in a national park is a privilege, close to the national park is a privilege. And I did mention about the campsite where 50% of the profits made is shared into the communities. And I will also not dwell much about tourism, but when you come to Majete or you send people to Majete, know that funds that you generate supports the park, and you'll be accommodated at beautiful lodges. We have a Tawale Lodge. It's a basic bush lodge, but it's a very good standard. Carmen can testify on this one. Good food, beautiful natural food, and enjoy fire stories in listening to more local Malawi stories. That's more of tourism facilities. So that's the campsite. Like I mentioned, 50% goes to the communities. We have a frame on the campsite, and we have tented spaces where you can put up your tent. In terms of activities that you do when you come to stay in Majete, you can do driving safaris, morning and evening ones, even night ones. Community visit, like I mentioned before, so you can drive to the communities to watch these dances, or simply you invite them into the reserve and platform for all visits. And you can see the middle photo on the top row. There's our friends that visited, they are practicing how to pound maize. Boat rides is one of their community activities. Community guides, we have community guides that we have employed to try and just help them. They take guests. They hop in the guests' game viewers, guest vehicles, and drive around with them, and just to make money for themselves. At the same time, they're providing a service to visitors, because most of our safe driving visitors don't have knowledge about the park and don't know what to do when they find an elephant. So it's important to have someone who knows. Just to mention, we are training these communities. We brought someone from Gasa, South Africa, and they guided from. He's providing a guiding course to these communities so they can also be well equipped. In terms of tourism statistics, I also not dwell on that much, but you can see that the figures are growing. In 2019,
Hey, Emmanuel, we might have to stop you right here. We are running a bit short of time, so yeah, maybe you'd like to share the last two slides, and then we can hop on to some questions. I think a few people here have kind of a few questions to
I
ask.
think
Yeah.
those were the, and this is the final one, the challenges that we face. That was the final slide. So um, I was gonna stop there. And Majete is the story of hope and resilience. Um, the challenges, I'm sure if you have any questions, we can be asked, but we don't have that many challenges. Most of the challenges are the things that we are afraid might happen. But yeah, of course, running a national park has challenges. So those are just a few challenges, but I was already almost gone. Yeah.
I'm sure it's not easy running an entire national park the size of Singapore, and thank you so much for sharing all of that with the audience here. And I think the photos were quite captivating. We learned a little bit more about what Majete is like. I think here, before we start on with Carmen's sharing of their behind the scenes in Majete Wildlife Reserves, maybe we can take a few questions from the floor if anyone has any.
For
No one?
Emmanuel, yeah.
For Emmanuel? Yeah.
Yeah, what are the biggest challenges in running such a reserve?
Okay.
And what does the MPAS equivalent or MPAS law play a role in the running of the park?
Yeah, okay, that's a really great question. So I think what does it take, right, to run a park this size? And also what is the NParks? So NParks is the national parks in Singapore, it's called NParks. And what is the equivalent in Africa, and what do they play in running this park alongside African parks?
It takes a huge effort. You've got to be committed. There are key factors like funding. That's very, very important. Um, I have watched African parks starting to work, and what they do is the basic things like to start with, you need to see if we have to run Majete, what do we need? We need to protect animals from going in and out. So at first I would say funding is the best and the most important thing. You have to invest, and once you have funding, you have to slowly take it step by step, like thinking about, okay, I have a phase, I have completed a phase in my Majete Wildlife Reserve. What do I need? Okay, we don't have animals. We need to bring back animals from other national parks. That's when translocation comes. But of course, it also involves a lot of funding because it's a very expensive project. You bring back all the animals. Now you think about the future of the animals. How will the animals be protected from further poaching? You need to employ more rangers. Not only that, if you employ more rangers, rangers have to be skilled. These poachers used to stay inside the national park. They are fastest in running. The ranger would easily give up when you're chasing these poachers. They used to stay here. The land belongs to them. They are fit. So you need to have rangers that are well trained. After you train your rangers, you educate the communities around on how it's important it is to preserve the wildlife that we have, the benefits of having these national parks, what impact it could have on these local people. Once they understand, they will stop from coming in to kill the animals. And you have animals that are there reproducing again, and in future you can be able to populate other national parks. So I would say it takes everything that you have. It takes great effort. It's a very, very challenging project, and it needs skills, it needs help from people that are experts to come here and tell us on how better we can do it. It helps inputs, it involves inputs from local people on how we can do it. And together we can slowly change the wildlife. And it's not a 1 year job, it's ongoing. It has taken 20 years for Majete to be where it is now. So it takes great effort.
Yeah, indeed. I think it is not easy really running a park this size, and definitely it takes, I think, a lot of commitment from the people who work there, and also a lot of funding that goes into translocation of very large animals. So it requires expertise, I'm sure, from the vets and from conservation teams. Planning and rewilding a park is definitely not easy. Shall we now hop on to Carmen has some stuff to share with us. And I think maybe let's hear a little bit from Carmen and Tim with us today about their experience in Majete and what I guess the experience really transformed the way that they have seen the park, being rejuvenated. So yeah, would you like to share?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. First of all, I guess one of the things that Emmanuel was pointing out was the rewilding of that area, right? In the beginning, they had to actually kind of help transform an area that has been depopulated, right? And we see that a lot even with swag. We see this depleted secondary forest, which Singapore is also dealing with this issue, right? You have what used to be a rainforest and now it's not. So it was almost, there had to be a lot of infrastructure done, which you could see in one of Emmanuel's slide, that infrastructure becomes even a part of making a national forest, because they have, people have re-engineered where rivers move, where water goes, where people stay, where resources are coming from. So that even had to be done, and it has to be maintained. Like the fences around the park were very important to establish that this is a boundary, that this will be a wild space, and that is what we want to work on. Another part of it that I just wanted to point out from Emmanuel's presentation was that, of course, they're going to start off with the natural landscape architects, which were the initial wild animals like elephants and the antelope, rhinos. These animals themselves will start to change a landscape, and only then, maybe later, you then start to introduce the predators. So there is this kind of like natural. There's initially a man-made buildup of the landscape that is then helped by the animals later on, because if you just have antelope and elephants, then they will transform the landscape into a way that it will start to deplete itself. So right now, Africa Parks is really in that latter stage where they're trying to monitor and control everything, and they take a lot of statistics and a lot of time to come up with those with that data, like he showed the census there. That takes a lot of resources to get that census. And parks, maybe we're not at the point where we're actually compiling a census as well as maybe Africa Parks is doing so. But they have a lot of funding to do that. And as Emmanuel pointed out, funding is a big, big, big deal, right? And that makes it rather unique in Africa, where the government itself cannot necessarily fund this. So they really rely on outside funding to make sure that they can keep up with the operations of maintaining this park. Yeah. I think Carmen is going to show some of the slides now of the backstory of what happens at Majete.
So these are not slides. So going back to the original idea, we went to Majete originally to follow the wildlife monitoring team to track African wild dogs, and they're very elusive. They behave like dogs. They like to they run around in packs, and there are, I believe, Emmanuel and Rosie can correct me, but I think there are 14 dogs in the whole of Majete right now. So they're all collared, and we went and the team took us out because these dogs are collared, or at least a few of them. And so one day, so we spent the first day driving all morning, driving, and no radio signals. But the team actually in the morning, because the dogs are GPS collared, and they actually every morning they do have GPS points where they know the vicinity of where the dogs are. But so we went to that area and we drove around, we stuck the telemetry out, no signals. So we were all disappointed and we got back. And then the next day, they said, okay, let's try again. And then they saw the GPS points where the dogs were overnight. So we drove to that area and so this is what you see here is actually how it's done. It's many hours of doing this, standing next to a car with the telemetry thing sticking out, and you just wait for that ping. And at this point, this is where okay, so there are two signals. The GPS signals tells you where, in which area they were overnight, I think the signals come in at 6 a.m. every day. So by the time twice a day, so by the time we went out, they might have moved because they're dogs and they like to move around. So we drove to that area somewhere near, and we actually did this, and we could pick up a signal. So here is Michael. Michael is one of the wildlife monitoring team members. And he said, okay, let's get out of the car, and we start walking. And this is how it's done. It's high grass, it's tall grass, and you spend a lot of time doing this.
Yeah, walking through the grass.
Just
Going through the bush.
So is this done by the monitoring team when you guys are not there? It's
yes.
done all. So
we
this
were
is
just
done
lucky that we got the chance to follow the monitoring team to do this, and this is part of the backstory. Is that we supported a campaign to an auction to do this, and we managed to win the auction, and that's why we ended up in Malawi, in Majete. And so eventually we did find the dogs. We were walking and we could hear the signals, so we kept on going through the tall grass and we kept walking, and then we came, and so dogs being dogs, they were sitting around, and as we were getting close, we could actually hear them bark. They barked, and that's how we found out that, okay, they're actually in the area. But we couldn't see them. But this is what we saw. We got up, and they have just finished eating, I think this is a sable antelope. And you can see it's pretty much all gone. I think this is the head.
Plane.
Yes.
So for reference, maybe we can tell people how big a sable is compared to a wild dog. So a wild dog, or a painted wolf rather, it's probably about the size of a domestic
Maybe a
dog.
30 kilograms or so.
30 kilograms.
A
Yep.
big
And this,
domestic dog.
And
yeah.
this sable antelope, it's about the size of the samba deer.
Yeah.
Samba deer?
about
Yeah, a
that-
bit
that
bigger.
tall.
Yeah.
Tall.
A
So
pretty
I-
big animal.
Yeah, I mean, Rosie, if you want to jump in anytime, then lend your expertise, please do. So, okay, so we found the dogs, but they kept moving, and we could still hear them. So we went deeper and deeper into the grass, and we eventually, actually, I had to climb onto like a small boulder, and we could see them quite like distance away, and so that was
it.
our sighting. I mean, if you think, seeing the big five is difficult, I thought tracking the dog. And before the trip, I thought, oh, come on, we have these, they're collared. How difficult could it be? We must be able to see them. But it's actually not. It's, they're elusive, but it makes it even more special, because actually wild dogs are one of the most successful predators in Africa, but they're notoriously difficult to see. So each sighting is just that much more precious. So that's the original idea. We went to Malawi to track wild dogs, and the wildlife monitoring team was really, really nice. So because they know that we are big wildlife lovers, so they invited us to another extremely important part of conservation, but it's a very unique experience for us. And let me see if I can, oh, no. So we were told, do you want to talk
No,
about?
you go.
Okay, so we were told that they know of three young male lions in the area, and then they want to collar them because they want to know, their territory and I guess if they are going to find a mate. And so we were invited to join this exercise, and we set out again the first day. We drove around. The way they do it is they play the audio recording of a distressed buffalo, so that the lions would think that, oh, there is a sick or ill buffalo, let's go eat it.
Check it out.
Yes, and so the recording was played, and we were in one location, and nothing. We played the recording, and we didn't hear any, no lions showed up. So we drove on, and this is getting dark. It's sunset. They're using spotlights, and we're in predator territory. And so we just hang around, sit at the back of a pickup truck. And then after a while, it was dark, and we could hear, actually, the lions. You could hear the. Do you want to do it?
Yeah. What?
The lion.
They didn't make that sound, but we could see them getting. They were starting to come. The pride was attracted to the noise, and oddly enough, the second noise that they were playing was a hyenas. And lions don't like hyenas, so they think, man, those hyenas over there. That means there's food over there. So they come down, and there was like 5 lions starting to come down. And so at that point, you can see in the photo now, they have to start preparing darts. So it takes a bit of you need to have a special license for this, and they have the vet coming in from the Blantyre, actually. She's the main vet at Blantyre. And, on the weekend, she gets to dart lions. That's something you get to do when you're a vet in Blantyre, I suppose. And so she had basically an air gun with this concoction that she created to tranquilize the lion. So when they were attracted to come and get some baited food, to be honest, there's also a smell that will attract the lions, and so you need to have some baited food for them to get a whiff of, and then they would come down and get something to eat. And that also allows the darting to happen in a relatively controlled area, right? Because you know the lion will be there, and you have a good shot at it, right? So, because the air gun is not going to have a very long range, right? It's not the best of things. So she darted it, and it went to sleep. So that's the back of the cab there. You can go on. So here they are. So the thing about after you dart a lion, maybe you got 45 minutes to before the lion starts waking up again, right? So the team's got, and they're moving pretty fast here. See a whole team moving on this lion, and they have a chance to basically take its blood. They take a DNA sample from the tail. They're also gonna start like doing some nice basic physical work for the lion. You know, like they're taking like this lion had a very bad tick infection in the ear, so they get to swab that out. They also got to give it some antibiotics, or not antibiotics, but a vaccination, just a general vaccination against disease, so this lion could have a bit of a better shot. It had been chomped on by other lions, so they get to put some iodine on those wounds and stuff like that. We picked it up, so it was about 175 kilograms, so it's pretty heavy. And I don't know if that's unique to this experience, but generally after it goes down, the friends aren't very happy. So, you know, it's in a pride of lions. So there's 4 other lions that are like, hey, where's Jeffrey? You know, or in this case, they named him Tim after me. That was very sweet. So they had to put another name on the test, so that they called it like this lion Tim. So Tim's friends were not happy, and they were roaring. So we had to stick him on the back of a flatbed and drive him down a kilometer down the road, then take him back off the flatbed, and then they could have some peace and quiet to do all the tests they needed to do, and put on this collar, and then make sure that the collar worked. You know, so you put it on, you test it, you make sure the GPS is coming into the machine. They make sure that the radio frequency, the RFD on it is also working, so that they can track it later with the antenna. So yeah, Carmen?
Yeah, so what you can see is actually everybody knows exactly what their role is. It's quiet, you know. It's everybody is talking in a whisper, and everybody, you know, it just moves like a symphony. Everybody, you know, it's not the first time. Obviously, the teams have done this, but so we were just trying to be as not in their way as possible, but while also looking at, you know, watching this happening. And you can, I mean, I don't know if you can see it from this angle, but it's a very big, it's big. So, you know, it's every time, you know, whenever they want to roll it, you know, it takes several people, and I think Tim said, you know, we were told that you have about 40 minutes, you know, from the time it started to it, I guess, sleeping to when it wakes up. So every second is basically just, there's a sense of urgency while this is happening. So yeah, and I think, you know, at this point, you know, they have just taken blood, put the collar on, and like Tim said, they clip hair from the lion, and then they put it in a little, I guess, tube, and then they have to name it. And that's when they said, what are we naming this lion? And then they said, okay, it's Tim, because it's a male. I'm sure if it was a girl, I was hoping that it would have been Carmen.
Yeah, it would have been Carmen.
Not to be, anyway. So that's then you can see that later on. Okay, this is the team. This is a team that we tagged along with, and you can see, yeah, this is a young male, about 4 years old, and he's already 170 kilos. And this is the size of the paw. and I have to confess, I couldn't help it. I rubbed his tummy, and yes, and
Not soft.
no, it's not soft. It's actually quite rough, the hair, yeah. And this is after about less than 40 minutes, actually.
Yeah, well, I mean, generally after they do that, they'll do all the triage things, and then they will give it an injection. That injection gives you basically 3 to 7 minutes until it gets up again. And in this case, it was about 3 minutes, and he was, he'll come right back. He'll just come right back up. A bit like a hangover, kind of whacked out, actually. But yes, he's intact, and it wears off relatively quickly because the antidote works really fast at that point. Yeah.
So I think what's really nice about this, it's really being able to see what parts of the operations of managing a park like that and what it really takes, like the number of people, the effort it takes to monitor the animals that they painstakingly translocate into this park to make it successful. And I think just like an operation like this would cost, in fact, I don't know how much an operation like this would cost, but it would cost so much money. And this is why the funding to African parks is important, to ensure that the animals that are reintroduced continue to thrive in the park. And also, I think, to pay the people who actually help to do the work.
But also, I mean, in addition to that, I think the whole, our intention for tonight is actually obviously to encourage people to visit not only just African parks. African Parks Network it manages a few parks all over Africa, but Majete is definitely well worth the trip. And I don't know how many Singaporeans, when you talk to a park manager or a lodge manager, and they can tell you oh, I've had 3 visitors from Singapore. You know how rare it is for anyone to travel from Singapore to visit the park. So this is so what we want to do is actually to I guess sell Malawi, sell Majete, and encourage our people to go from Singapore to visit these fantastic parks. And and I think there was a question about
what opportunities there are for, I think, gap year students in, I think just generally, I think the question was, are there any opportunities for students in gap years, or I don't know, maybe Emmanuel can help to answer that, if there's...
I don't know.
What was the question again about students?
Yeah, so basically the question is, what opportunities are there for gap years or volunteer contributions by young adults? So maybe not students, but young adults.
I think I will leave that one to Rosie. Rosie, do you want to take on that one?
Yeah, that's fine. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep, loud and clear.
Great. I'm really jealous seeing these pictures, Carmen, because it was more than a year and a half of you and I discussing your trip, and then I wasn't here when you came, so I'm sad that I missed you, but I'm glad I'm getting to see your pictures now. But yeah, just in terms of students and volunteers, we do have a structured volunteer program that's actually run through the vet that Carmen was showing in those photos. She runs an organization called Worldwide Veterinary Service, and they run a volunteer program in Majete that's not for vets, it's for anybody, but it's a conservation experience program. So you stay in the park and basically do what these guys did for however long you want to stay for. Basically just go out with Michael and Craig and the monitoring team each day and learn how to work with the wildlife and collect all the important data that we need and also opportunities to join in with other activities with our community extension team, going out into the communities and things like that. So that's one opportunity. And then we also have normally one placement per year in the park for an international intern that works directly with the monitoring team. But that's primarily that's reserved for people that will come for the whole year, and people with a background in ecology. The idea being that it's a proper work experience placement, trying to help people that will be entering into the industry in African conservation. So that's a little bit more selective, but the other program that the Worldwide Veterinary Service run is open to anybody really. So we can easily share details about that afterwards by email if anyone is interested.
Fantastic. Yeah, that would be great. And yeah, so I think if anyone's interested to visit and try your hands out on stuff like that, I think that would be a fantastic opportunity. But if not, I think just going to the park as a visitor would be equally great. Maybe just one last question before we wrap up. I think there's a bit of a feedback. But yeah, any last questions from the audience for Tim and Carmen, or for Emmanuel or Rosie?
I have another video.
Oh, Carmen has another video to share, but I was going to ask about the wild dogs. But
Okay.
Oh.
No, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna ask if, maybe just in general for all four of you, wild dogs being, actually they're closer descendants of wolves than they are of dogs, but I know that there are also dogs in the park. So does that cause a problem between the wild population and the domestic dog population? Because that is clearly a problem in quite a lot of developing countries when they have wild, dog populations, canine.
I think Rosie might be.
Yeah, maybe Rosie, you might be in a better position to answer that question.
Yeah, really great question, actually. And it's something that's really important to us. So rabies in particular in Malawi is really, really endemic. We have one of the highest cases of rabies per population in the world. So it's a big concern, and rabies and distemper are very, very high causes of death of wild dogs across Africa because of their because they're pack animals and they're constantly licking each other. So once one dog is infected, it spreads through the whole pack, and it's very common to lose an entire pack very quickly. So we take a lot of precautions for that. So obviously our canine dogs that you're referring to that are in the park who are doing tracking, they are vaccinated continuously, and health checks every day. They're given health checks so we can keep on top of any potential issues with them. Wild dogs, we also vaccinate. So Dagmar, the vet that was darting that lion, she's a vet of all trades. So actually her primary job is rabies eradication in Malawi. She goes around, when she's not darting lions for us, she's running rabies vaccination campaigns in domestic dogs across the country. So we have very ready rabies vaccinations. It's exactly the same vaccination for domestic dogs as for wild dogs. And every year we vaccinate all the adult wild dogs in the pack. So historically, we've done this just by a dropout dart. So we use a dart gun and you shoot them with a dart, but it drops out once it's vaccinated them. So it's very quick and easy. We don't have to knock them out. They get a little bit of a bee sting and they don't even notice, and they carry on eating. But we're actually now trialing an oral vaccine for domestic dogs in India that's proven very effective. At whether we're running some trials this year as to whether we can convince the dogs to eat pellets, or it's a powder that's hidden inside a carcass that we feed them. So it's very clever how they do it with the feral dogs in India. So we're testing it this year, but otherwise for now we're vaccinating them with darts. then we actually vaccinate any carnivore that we inoculate, that we immobilize. So the lion, when you darted that lion, he would have been given a rabies vaccine as well. And that's opportunistic. We can't go out and dart every single predator with a rabies vaccine, but any opportunity when we're darting them for collaring, we will vaccinate. And then the other thing, as I said, Dagmar is running these rabies vaccination campaigns. So all the villages around Majete, we run vaccine campaigns for domestic dogs. So we're just trying to minimize this possibility of any cross-contamination between the domestic population and the wild population.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so important. I'm glad that you guys have this new vaccine going on, or anti-rabies vaccine. I think that is fantastic. Okay, I think that's kind of all that we have for today, and we have to wrap up. Thank you so much to Emmanuel and Rosie for joining us today. Could we give them a hand? Those in Singapore, thank you. I hope you can hear. Thanks, guys.